This podcast is a production of Queens Public Television in New York City. Visit us on the web at qptv.org.
Hey, I'm Mark Bacino, and this is Queens Creative. Welcome to another episode of the Queens Creative Podcast, coming to you from Queens Public Television in New York City. I hope everyone out there listening is healthy and keeping safe. On today's pod, I welcome the talented singer-songwriter, film composer, sound editor, and Forest Hills, Queens resident, Eytan Mirsky. In addition to the 7 album releases credited to Mr. Mirsky as an artist, Eytan has also written music for a number of critically acclaimed and award-winning films such as Happiness, American Splendor, Palindromes, and the Tao of Steve. And if that wasn't enough, in addition to his musical work, Mr. Mirsky is also a skilled film sound editor, having lent his talents to several Academy Award-winning motion pictures. Listen in on this episode as Eytan and I discuss Eytan's music, his collaborative relationship with acclaimed filmmaker Todd Solondz, what it was like to have one of his songs sung by REM's Michael Stipe, and much more. Then, after our talk, be sure and stick around as Eytan treats us to a remote live performance direct from his home here in New York City. Okay, let's jump into my conversation with the very cool Eytan Mirsky. Hey man, welcome to Queens Creative. Thanks so much for talking to us. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I wanted to start, as I do with a lot of my guests, I thought I'd start by diving a bit into your background. So you're a New Yorker, born and raised, a Queens kid from Kew Gardens Hills, right?
That's right. I grew up near Main Street and Jewel Avenue, if anyone knows where that is.
Right. So what was it like growing up in that neighborhood as a kid for you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, how would you describe it? I mean, it's like a normal kind of semi-suburban area, you know? I mean, it's I lived in a garden apartment, which is like a 2-story building where you have your own door to the street. So it's almost like a house. Then across the street from me was, there were houses across the street from me, but I lived in a garden apartment development.
Now, I thought I read one time, I don't know where I read this, didn't like Paul Stanley from Kiss grow up in Kew Gardens Hills?
I've read it in Wikipedia or something that he lived just a few blocks away, seemingly, from where I lived. And both Simon and Garfunkel actually lived over there too, even though they're known for attending Forest Hills High School, but they actually lived in Kew Gardens Hills. I do think I read that Garfunkel had his bar mitzvah at the Jewish Center of Kew Garden Hills, or it's Kew Garden Hills Jewish Center, whatever it's called. I know when I was growing up that people would mention playing basketball with Paul Simon's brother in the playground over there. There used to be these playgrounds by Park Drive East, it was called. Mm-hmm. Which is like part of Flushing Meadow Park, but on the other side of Jewel Avenue, which runs right through the park. There's another park. And anyway, people would say they played basketball.
Goodbye to Rosie, Queen of Corona. Yeah.
His brother looks exactly like him. I guess it's his younger brother. And he's also a musician.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
And he looks just like him. It's crazy. I never even heard of the guy I had heard of him, but I hadn't heard that he was a musician till recently. And then someone said, look him up. I was just saying that I had grown up and had heard that he lived in the neighborhood.
A ton of amazing musical talent has sort of grown up in that area. I don't know, there must be something in the water. But so as a kid growing up in Kew Gardens Hills, how did you get the musical bug? Like, how did you play? Did you play in the usual high school garage bands, that kind of thing?
No, not at all. Well, I don't know what it was, but when I started taking lessons when I was in 10th grade. I took lessons from a guy who was, I guess he was an old band leader, like in big bands or something.
Like guitar lessons. You're talking guitar lessons.
Guitar lessons,
right,
yeah.
Right.
I mean, how I got the bug, I don't know. I just was into it. You a little younger than me, but still, growing up in the 70s, I mean, it was just like, I guess people just wanted to be a rock star and whatever.
There was a lot less distraction. That was like a thing. That was like, I mean, yeah, sure. I remember as a kid too.
Yeah, it just seemed like a lot of people wanted to get into music. I mean, I wasn't thinking about quote unquote getting into music. It was just like, it was just a cool thing to do. It wasn't. I didn't have any plan. I don't really know. My mother told me recently that I wanted to learn the piano, but she didn't want to get a piano. I don't even remember that, to tell you the truth.
Right.
But anyway,
the guitar is a good substitute.
Right. I think it's because she had a piano in her apartment when she grew up, and I saw that when visiting my grandparents or something.
Oh, really?
But I don't even remember that. But anyway, somehow got a recommendation or something. I guess this guy, Jerry Otto, he lived in, my neighborhood. He was over on, I think it was Melbourne Avenue, near Queens College.
By the college,
and
yeah.
He wrote these books, actually. Like, he had this chord book that showed you how to figure out different chords with a moving plastic thing that, you could transpose everything from one key. And he invented this as a double pick, which had this piece of foam in between. So it was a stereo pick. Sorry, I think he had advertised it as a stereo pick.
Pick.
And then it also had a jagged edge on one of them, so you could make weird sounds with that. Yeah.
Wow, so he's like a tinker as well.
He was kind of an inventor, and he had these books, and but he really wasn't a rock guy. He did say he had taught other people at one point, and I think it was maybe someone from Electric Flag was one of those guys from Hollis. I don't know.
Really?
I don't remember what he
Black
was telling
Flag
me.
or somebody like that.
Yeah. Someone who was famous. Maybe he had
his claim to fame. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's not alive anymore. It was kind of a weird experience because when my father would drive me over from lessons sometimes, and he would be waiting. I mean, he would have him sit there and give my father to read, to listen to on the late great Planet Earth, which is like this evangelist thing. I think he was some kind of born again guy. And his daughter, I looked her up recently, is into that now.
I see.
Herself.
So he's an interesting character to sort of influence your musical beginnings.
Yeah. But I mean, it was kind of unfortunate that I wasn't really playing in a rock way, but it's okay because I'm not really trying to be a guitar virtuoso.
Right, you're more of a songwriter. That's sort of your thing.
But if I had, I don't know what would have happened. I guess I would have.
Well, you must have been listening to bands, right? Like, what were you listening to around that time as a teenager? Were you? I mean, I assume you're listening to rock bands.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Beach Boys a lot. I mean, I was listening to other stuff like The Who, but I mean, I did like the Beach Boys a lot. And then I only took guitar lessons, I guess through high school. So in other words, from 10th to 12th grade, I think I took guitar lessons. And other stuff I was listening to was, things like I was into the Jay Giles band for a while, Mink DeVille, things like that.
Sure.
But
that's cool.
And Nick Lowe there towards the end of my high school.
Kind of explains your musical taste in sort of your musical style, so kind of that was sort of in your high school years. And
I should mention, I was into Jonathan Richman a lot in high school, and that really explains why I could just play acoustic guitar and just sing silly songs. That was what it was doing,
No, that makes sense. I kind of, now that you're saying that, I definitely hear a lot of Jonathan Richman.
I first saw
stuff.
Jonathan Richman play at when I was about 15 or so in the Loeb Student Center at NYU, which in about 1977. Which is, I don't think the Loeb Student Center exists anymore. I'm sure there's something there. That's a building. I don't know if it's still called that.
Right. Yeah, he's an interesting character too, man. And I could certainly, listening to your stuff, I could totally hear, the influence. Now, you mentioned NYU, so sort of going forward a bit, you graduated from Brandeis, right? But then you attended New York Graduate Institute of Film and Television, right?
I should point out, maybe it's irrelevant, but to explain, I did go to private school in Soho.
Okay.
It's this thing called the Elizabeth Irwin High School of the Little Red Schoolhouse Incorporated. I think it's Incorporated. Anyway, that's why I was down in the Village alone. That's why I shows down there. But
well, certainly an influence
then I went to
too.
Brandeis. Went to Brandeis for 4 years and came back. Actually, when I was in Brandeis, I would, not to jump ahead, I don't know what the structure of this interview is, but
no structure.
I did play, when I was in college, I played music and would perform at like the local coffee house or events in school, and I would do these like silly songs about college life. Like
I didn't Brandeis, know that.
Yeah, Brandeis is a largely Jewish school. It probably still is, but definitely at the time. I mean, it's a secular school. There's nothing religious about it. It just happens to be just the history of the school. So they have, in one of the cafeterias, though, they have a kosher line for people who only eat kosher. So I had this song called "She's on the Kosher Line." It was about this, guy who's in love with a girl who's on the kosher line.
That's great.
And then I had another one called "Pre-Med Girl," and it just, song called "In the Library" about just ridiculous college, comical, kind of comical.
So you weren't really playing in bands in high school, but in college you started performing as a solo act, just doing like acoustic.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't in a band. Actually, towards the end of my college, because I had played like one big event, there was this thing. I don't think there was any charity involved, but anyway, there was this called Louis D's Cabaret. Because the school's named after Louis D. Brandt, guys.
Right, Louis D's Cabaret.
A Supreme Court justice. I performed at this thing, and some guys asked me to join their band, and I didn't do it because I was just about to graduate, and they were younger.
Now you ask me, yeah.
Yeah, they weren't around because they were younger.
I see.
Most, they were sophomores. They might have even been freshmen. Yeah, I probably should have done it anyway, but I didn't do it. So
now, when you go to an NYU after Brandeis, you go, like I said before, to the film and television program. So, which sort of alludes to your parallel career as a film sound editor, which we'll talk about a little later. But for now, I wanted to ask, why study film and not music, since it seems like that's such an important presence in your life up until that point.
Looking back, I really don't know what the hell I was doing. but I for some reason I always wanted to be in film. I wanted to write, films.
Oh, really?
For the most part,
as a screenwriter.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were going for directorial kind of stuff, or as a cinematographer.
When you're there,
you kind of learn everything.
You make your own
right?
films. You make your own films, and you write and direct. I mean, it really wasn't geared to people who just write, not direct. Yeah,
that's weird. I've heard that before from other people who've gone to film school. They say like you kind of have to. They kind of make you do everything. I guess it makes sense. So you kind of learn a little bit about everything. So you know your way around. Every facet of sort of the process, which, I think is helpful, right? I mean...
Yeah, no, I'm sure there are programs that are geared, just to writing, but yeah, it's really geared to doing a little of everything, and certainly direct. It's kind of funny because then the people get there and maybe they want to direct and they have no idea what to write, and it's, they just don't know. I mean, I'm not separating myself from that. I'm sure, but it's just like how to come up with anything to actually do is a problem. But
yeah, no.
It's hard to put myself back in the time. I think I wanted to do it.
So you didn't really view music as a full-time thing. You kind of felt like it was something that you were doing as a pastime that you enjoyed, but you weren't really looking at it as a formal career.
I never thought that I was going to make a living out of music. Maybe like I thought I would have a band when I was in high school. I might have like had a fantasy of having some band, but it never occurred to me that then I would do it for a living or anything. But when I was in film school, I be working on other people's films, and I would start making up ridiculous songs, like summarizing their whole plot and everything.
Right. Carry over from the college days. Yeah.
Yeah. So one guy, I'm trying to remember if someone actually used something that I did, but I'm not. It's also vague in my mind now.
Right.
But anyway, I did do this a few times. Would make up songs like.
So the music was still there, regardless. Even when you were studying the film kind of stuff, the music was always sort of a constant presence. Which sort of leads me to my next point, which is I kind of wanted to jump back into your musical trajectory. So in 1996, you release your proper debut album, the first of 7 as an artist, called Songs About Girls and Other Painful Subjects. So I love the title. It's funny. Now, musically speaking, the record sort of establishes you stylistically, at least to my mind, as working sort of in the power pop genre. But the title of the record and its lyric, and the record's lyrics sort of point to what would become, as I see it, like a recurring theme in your work, which is humor, right? Like your song lyrics are always very clever and snarky and funny, to great effect. And it kind of goes along with what you were saying about, the writing you were doing at college. And I also struck me that aside, in going along with the humor, many times your main characters in your songs are very, they're kind of like sad sack, downtrodden kind of thing. Uh-huh. Can you speak to that thought behind your sort of almost comedic thing?
Let me circle back a little, which is that when I went to film school, and I got out of film school, and I was then tried to write some screenplays. And in fact, I even wrote one with Todd Solondz, who was in my class, and he
right. I was going to ask you about
somewhat
him.
Big success. Which we'll talk about that later. But anyway, I wrote a number of screenplays with another friend of mine, and then I wrote one with Todd, and then I wrote some treatments with Todd. But anyway, after a few years, I realized like I'm not getting anywhere with this.
Now, were they comedic? Were they comedic scripts? Or, I mean, were they funny films? Is that what you were, that could tie into what this?
Yeah, for the most part, they were. For the most part, the scripts I wrote were funny. Whether they were really funny or not, they were intended to be. I'm not.
Right. Your intent, right.
Yeah. I'm not saying they were great scripts, far from it, I'm sure. But my point was I tried to do this and for a while, but I wasn't trying like all out. In other words, I was, I was working in a real job. I wasn't, I wasn't even giving it quote unquote my all doing that. But anyway, after a few years, I decided like I'm not really going to succeed at this. Then I started to do music again more because, it's like if you wanted to make your own film, like assuming that I even thought I could do that, it would, cost a lot of money, even though at the time you had people making, cheap films like Chan is Missing or, She's Gotta Have It or things like that.
Sure. Still expensive. Cheap film was still expensive at that time. It's not like cheap film today, if you think about it.
Now you can make a cheap film on your phone and it cost you nothing or whatever. Right. I mean, theoretically,
right.
Obviously, you'd still have the good story and you'd have to have a, you'd
have to have all the moving parts, but
figure out how to do it cheaply.
But it wouldn't cost you $10 million, yeah.
Correct. But then you had to have film and cameras and whatever. I mean, but regardless, you do music, you could do it much cheaper. And I had a friend who was in a band and he had like home recording equipment and,
Right. So you kind of went about it that way. So that was at a sort of inflection point for you where you're sort of like, hey, maybe this screenwriting thing isn't going to work out. So you started channeling your creative energies a little more seriously into the songwriting.
Right. I mean, again, it's not still, wasn't thinking I was making a good living out of it or something. I was just like, there's another way to be creative and it doesn't, and also you could
another outlet
actually complete something. You're not,
Yeah. Right. You're not dependent on all the other moving parts, and it's a 3-minute song that you're writing as opposed to a film and actors and,
Right. But most of the time, even if you're writing a script, like if you're writing a script to try to get it done by someone else, it'll never get done. And even if you sold it, it would just be sitting somewhere, which, okay, but at least you made the money. But I'm just saying, like, you write a song, you record a song, at least you can record it, or it exists, you can perform it. So that was my thinking there. But as far as the first album, I didn't really even know, and maybe you're in the same, I assume you were in the same boat. Like, I didn't even heard of the term power pop. I mean, at the time when I was recording my first album, I didn't even know that such a thing existed. Just like I listened to...
It's such a weird term, too.
Music. I just listened to that kind of music. I did listen to the Rubinoos when I was in high school, and I'm sure there were some other bands also of that time period, but I didn't know there was any classification. I mean,
I don't think I knew either back then.
But I mean, like, I listened to oldies radio a lot, so that kind of music or whatever, it's
very melodic.
Other bands like that. Yeah. Like I said, I like the Beach Boys, but I mean, if you're taking just singles by like Tommy James and the Shondells or the Grassroots or something,
Right. No, I hear you, man. I had the similar experience. Like, I was writing, and I very similar to what you're saying. I mean, I remember one A&R person, like a cool person at Columbia that I was talking to early on, and they were like, you're really like a pop guy. Do you know that? Like, you should really, write like that. Like, you should really accentuate that, because it sounds like that's really what you're doing naturally. And that's funny, because that sort of, made me think twice. And I sort of focused in on that before I made my first record, just to, like, take their advice and be like, I kind of do like, I don't know what you call it, but I do like, ultra melodic music, and I think everything that you're describing, seems to sort of fit that same bill,
Yeah, I mean, I guess as an element of it was just, that it was kind of an outdated style by the time that, we were doing. But I didn't realize it was a movement of anything. I guess I was just doing things that I liked when I was younger, or something in that vein.
And also during that time, you had, in that like 96, like around in the late 90s, I think there was that sort of resurgence of, at least on the underground sort of music scene, there was a resurgence of that kind of music, So I think you
by the time I was making my second album, which, I'm sure we'll get to, but I mean, I was more aware that there was, because I somehow became aware of it, and sites that sold that kind of music and magazines. So I was more aware that was a thing, and I might have like accentuated that a little more in that direction. But in terms of the lyrics you were asking me, like, it's interesting because in the first album, I didn't have any particular focus. It was just my natural way of doing it, and I was just writing pop songs, and I guess the personality of her, it was somewhat humorous, and people reacted to the lyrics, but I hadn't thought about that much. And then when they did, I focused even more on the lyrics subsequently and other things. But there, I was just trying to write songs so I could do this album. I was just like, I want to do something, and this is, just what came out.
Yeah, but I noticed that, like you mentioned, your subsequent records. It seems like you go, further into that sort of, into that well, so to speak. It's a bad expression, but just like you're mining more of the comedic kind of vibe, I think, as you progress, as you get into your second record and stuff. It sounds like that becomes almost like an Eytan Mirsky sort of signature thing. At least I when I listen to your stuff.
I think it's definitely true, because in the beginning, as I say, I was just like, hey, I'm writing songs and I need lyrics for these songs. I mean, I wasn't trying, I wasn't deliberately necessarily, thinking about it. Then when people were like, hey, I really enjoy these lyrics, or they're so fun, they're fun. They weren't like so funny. I mean, it wasn't like a laugh riot or anything, but like, oh, really? I mean, no, I didn't even know you felt that way. Okay, well, that's,
It seems sort of like a natural extension from what you were doing, from what you were describing to me you were doing in college and in film school. It's sort of like you were just kind of writing these funny songs that people were noticing, and then it just seems like it's something inherent to your personality that you just, you're that kind of, you like to
Yeah, exactly. But then when people were making a point of it, when I hadn't even been, like, I thought I was writing normal pop songs. Right. But then I was like, oh, I'll accentuate that even more because you're actually reacting to it, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's always you get feedback from the audience. Oh, that works. It's kind of cool. And I think you're great at it, man. I mean, I think you're really great at it because I think, there are some people that do it. I've done it myself. It's just, I think there's a fine line between where it gets like I guess I feel like you kind of have to walk that line. And I think you do it perfectly. You don't want it to be like too like yuck, and I think that you want to have some, sort of gravity in it, some pathos, which I think you have. You kind of use that to use the comedic sort of thing to your advantage in telling a story and in getting a feeling across, but not in a way that it becomes like a joke so much. And I feel like it still supports. I don't like
songs in general that are like total jokes because I don't think you'd really want to listen to them over and over. Maybe there are people who do listen to those songs over and over, but
right, yeah, it's a great use of humor. I mean, the way you're doing it, for sure. Aside from your work as an artist, I wanted to talk a little bit and have some time about talking about that you've also done a sizable amount of music work for film, right? So songwriting for film, like you've contributed songs to some critically acclaimed and award-winning movies like Happiness with Philip Seymour Hoffman, American Splendor starring Paul Giamatti, The Tao of Steve, Palindromes, like.
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue that you're making because that's exactly at the point where I actually started to get into it. It was after the first album. I'm losing the chronology a little, but because I know I had a song from my first album just in the background of a film. I mean, I didn't write it, especially if it was, and you could barely hear it. It was.
It was like a sync thing where is after not purposely
Desert
written.
Blue was the name of it. I think Christina Ricci was in it. Maybe even I'm blanking on the people's names.
It's a long time now.
What's Goldie Hawn's daughter?
Oh, oh yeah, I'm blanking too, man. I'm gonna come around it from the back end.
Anyway, there were other famous people in the movie anyway. But the point being, like, I think I might have had that before Happiness, but I mean, it was a lot of these films that were produced by the same company, Good Machine, which was a
Kate Hudson. Kate Hudson.
There
right,
we go. Right.
Okay.
I was trying to think of the father's name so I could remember.
That's why I said I'm going to approach it from the back. Mark Hudson from the Hudson brothers. It's, it shows where our heads are at, man. We're talking about obscure pop bands from the 70s and their daughters.
Right. At that time, so as I mentioned, Todd Solondz was in my film school class, and he was making his what actually was his third film, but most people don't know about his first film. But he had his second film was a big success, which was Welcome to the Dollhouse, and now he's making the next film, Happiness, and one of the characters is a aspiring singer-songwriter, and he needed a song that she had written. I mean, in the context of the film, that this character would perform a song. So he gave me a few ideas, and I wrote, bits of 3 different things, I think, and then he chose the one that became the song Happiness. So
that's great.
And then so she sings in the film. Then they worked it into the score too, and then
as a theme.
And then ultimately Michael Stipe did a version, and so I expanded it with more lyrics. So and then Michael Stipe sang.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to say, like, ultimately Michael Stipe, lead singer of arguably one of the most famous rock bands, REM, sang the film's title track, right? So, like, how does it? I'll just stop you right there and ask you, how does it feel to have the superstar lead singer of a huge rock band sing one of your songs, in a movie, no less? Like, what does that feel like?
It was crazy at the time. I mean, it was really, an amazing thing at the time. and especially I was involved in the recording of it, and I didn't even know what I was doing too much.
Really?
Yeah, I was like supervising the recording of the track, and then we sent it to him, and he sent it back. But so I wish I knew, if something like that happened now, I would be more prepared to do it. But
right, maybe it was better. Maybe it was better.
It came out fine, but it was definitely a weird experience. Although they were a little on the downside, and in fact, it was a weird thing because he didn't want there to be he wouldn't allow the song to be on a soundtrack album because REM was putting another album out at the time, as if that was going to compete, or attention.
It could have, maybe, I guess. When you're up in that level of the world,
I guess, but it's like, maybe it would have been a sensitive thing within the group because they weren't involved in playing on. I don't know,
right. Yeah, if it would have been the band, maybe, yeah.
So that was a little disappointing in the sense that, like, they couldn't release, the song as a single or even as an album. What am I talking about? A single for,
So it was just in the movie, but nonetheless, man, I mean, just what an incredible experience.
It was great,
right?
Because, like I said, that was one of the biggest groups of the last decade at that time.
Sure.
I wish I had known more about how to submit songs. Not to say I would have gotten an Academy Award nomination, but I wish I had known about the process. Like, they're always changing the process, but I still think it probably was the same, and probably is the same now, that you have to basically submit it yourself and attest to the fact that you wrote it for the film.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Like, they don't assume that any song that's in a film was written for the film, because clearly that's not true,
Some sort of added after the
and
after
the producers didn't even tell me anything about it. Like, there was a process, so I didn't do anything for that film. Again, I'm not saying
all that stuff is so mysterious, man. I think it's it's in that stratosphere of Hollywood, weirdness designed to game it so that they can kind of do what they want, as opposed to you. Giving the little guy a shot.
I mean, the thing, because they have, look, you get Disney every year, that's what I'm saying, like, and there's big money behind getting all those Disney songs. I mean, it doesn't matter, or any number of other big films they're really pushing, and, but at least with Michael Stipe involved, like, maybe they would have wanted,
for sure.
Like, hey, this would have been good. Maybe someone would have said, like, we'll have Michael Stipe perform, so that would be good. I'm going to vote for this. I mean, still they'd have to be aware of what the song was. I mean, they're always changing the methodology. Like, the reason why I say it is because later on, when I did find out, and there was a certain year where you had to submit the song yourself and show where it was used in the film, and then they screened all those things. So, I mean, then they're always changing the rules, and I don't even know, but,
Hey, man, look.
Right.
It's
but
one
anyway,
of those things, right?
It was
Chalk
a
it
big,
up to learning.
It was a big thrill then at the time. And then from that is how I got some of the other bigger songs that I got, because I was then hanging around the Good Machine office, and I was talking to one of the guys who worked as a producer there, and I was like, hey, well, you guys doing anything else? You need any music? And by then, I guess I had done a second album, which was called Get Ready for Eytan. And they said, well, we're working on this film, The Tao of Steve. If you want to give me some of your music, I'll get it to the director. And I had the second album, and they gave it to her, and she and her editor started, putting songs here and there into the
that's cool
movie.
Sort of spec.
The weird thing is, too, she had gone to NYU a couple years behind me, so she knew who I was. I didn't remember.
Oh wow,
who
cool.
she was, but then a while later, they go like, well, you really. We really like your music, so could you come down and look at the movie? And we need a song for the tail credits.
Oh, wow.
So I go there, and they put me in a room to watch the movie with another guy who I think was the guy who wrote the score to that other movie I was talking about, Desert Blue. Because that was another one of their movies they had done. So we were watching the movie together, which is weird because
That's
we're
weird,
both there
yeah.
for the same reason. But okay. And then I'm watching this movie and I'm realizing, like, you know, and anybody who's seen The Tao of Steve, it's about this guy who develops this philosophy of picking up women by being a quote unquote Steve, which is, you know, he's got these 3 rules, which is,
It's a great movie.
you know, be distant and aloof.
But he's referring to Steve McQueen.
Right. He's got Steve McQueen, Steve Austin from Hawaii Five-0, and
That's right. I forgot about the other Steve.
there was another third. I'm just blanking out in this interview, but there were 3 in particular that they mentioned.
And that was what? That was Donald Logue. What's his name?
Donald Logue.
Yeah, Donald Logue. Right. Yeah.
But the preeminent one was Steve McQueen. But there were 2 others that they mentioned, as I say, Steve Austin, and I'm blanking on it.
The Hawaii Five-0 guy, I think, was his name.
Right.
Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve. Oh, Steve McGarrett.
McGarrett, right.
And then I said Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man. I was just mixing the 2 of them together. I was crossbreeding them.
Crossbreeding.
Yeah. Steve McGarrett and Steve Austin, not Steve Austin the wrestler. Steve Austin, you know, the $6 Million Man.
$6 Million Man.
But I mean, you know, as they point out, you know, name doesn't have to be Steve.
For the kids of the 70s.
It's just the philosophy, but.
Yeah, it's a funny movie, man. It's funny.
So anyway, as I'm sitting there, I said, like, you guys aren't going to believe this. Well, I didn't say it while I was saying to myself. Like, I had written this song called I Just Want to Be Your Steve McQueen a few months earlier because I was working, doing sound. Actually, as you mentioned, I was a sound editor. So I was doing sound for a short film that was written and directed by this guy named Barry Strugatz, who wrote the script for Married to the Mob.
Mm-hmm.
And this film was like a Cinderella story. It's this real schlubby guy who's working in the mailroom somewhere, and he gets picked on at work, and he gets picked on the street, and you know, and his father, who's played by Bill Macy from Maude, makes him clean up the house while he's going off to Atlantic City on a gambling trip.
Right.
So, and then one night, while in the middle of the night, he's watching television. I mean, he falls asleep. He wakes up and The Great Escape is playing, and then he has like an outer body experience, like lightning is hitting, and then he starts shaking and all that, and he's like possessed by, like, he's gonna be like Steve McQueen. So I said to Barry, look, if you want, I'll write you a song, and you know, you could use it, not use it, whatever, do whatever you want, you know.
Sure.
So I did, and then he put that on the tail credits of the movie.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't know that.
I was like, I'm watching this movie where the guys also, you know, philosophy is like Steve McQueen, and they didn't know that I had such a song. They just called me in to
that's
write
weird.
that, and I was like, well, you guys aren't going to believe this. When I got out of the screening, I said, you guys aren't going to believe this, but I already have this song that I recorded a few months ago called I Just Want to Be Your Steve McQueen.
And they were like, what? You're clairvoyant.
Yeah, it was weird because one person was like, and I can't remember who is who, like, I think my point is they didn't seem that excited about it, you know, which, like, what are you talking about? You just called me in to write a song, and I'm telling you I have a song that's exactly like.
And it's not like it's a song about like sunshine or love. It's a song about a really specific, like, thing. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, how could your reaction not be more, you know? Okay, but then they did get into it, and then I wrote another song while I was at it, maybe partly because they didn't even seem that excited about the first. I don't remember, but I wrote this other song, you know, just summarizing. It's kind of back to my film school days, like summarizing the whole movie, called The Tao of Steve. Isn't it time? Because I'm saying, isn't it time you learned about the Tao of Steve? So they ended up not using the Steve McQueen song for the tail credits. They ended up putting that in the movie, in a scene towards the end, montage, and then using the other song I wrote on the tail credits. So they used both of them.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I think I saw that film at the Angelicos. It's a cool movie, man. And there's catchy songs.
Yeah, I remember being in touch with you around that time. That's around the time when we first met, and we went to see Mike Viola. And,
that's right. We went to see.
I
think so. Yeah, at Fez or something. I think that's
Fez,
around that time.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
long lost Fez, man. Those were cool days. But you'd mentioned before Todd Solondz, so I wanted to just get into that a little bit. I was curious about how your working relationship and sort of the collaboration, and you touched on it a little, but how did that working relationship and collaboration with Todd come about? I mean, was it just you were the college buddies and you were writing together like you'd mentioned, or, I mean, how did that sort of...
Yeah, well, basically, yes. I mean, he had his previous movie, Welcome to the Dollhouse, had a lot of music, which I wasn't involved in at all. Mm-hmm. And he just, whatever the working relationship with the woman who did the songs for that, he, didn't work out or whatever. Okay. So, I mean, it wasn't like, but you know how it is. It's not even like initially that he was committing to using anything. It's just like, look, I need these songs. I'll give you a shot to try to do it.
Which is great, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like if he hadn't liked anything that I had presented, he just would have done something else that wouldn't, and that would have been it, But
you guys were friends. I mean, you hung out in college. I mean, I guess, were you close friends or were you just working partners?
No, we were friends. We were friends. So it's like, I always see him all the time. Not now, but I'm saying at the time. See him all the time. So yeah, he was just like, well, you could give it a shot. It wasn't. But like I say, he wasn't making any commitment. So there was nothing.
Man.
He wasn't. There was no risk on his part, is what I'm saying. Not that there was a great deal of risk on my part either.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool that that you guys had developed that sort of relationship and mm-hmm. carried it on. A couple of movies in and stuff like that. Now, we were talking about the film thing, but I just wanted to ask you this. Like, so obviously you enjoy writing for both film and yourself as an artist, right? So, how do you approach writing, say, a tune for a film project? As opposed to writing a song for one of your records? Is it the same? Is it different? How do you go? Do you look at them differently? Go about it differently?
I actually like, and I've noticed this long, as I've gone on, but is that just anything to like that, like an assignment like that, is good because you're, then you have a reason to even be doing anything, And then it's a challenge to put your own personality into it, even because like they want something, but then you have your own personality, and they're probably asking you to do it for that reason. But but somehow to get your own personality into what they're trying to do,
Right.
But just the fact that someone needs something is, it gives you motivation to even do anything. But
it's assignment driven, like you said.
But like in the last few years, I mean, it's not even a few years anymore. But I belong to this group that a friend of mine created on Facebook, where mm-hmm. He puts up a theme, and every couple of weeks, within that time period, you could either post yourself performing a cover of some song that fits the theme, or you could write an original song. So, like the last couple of albums were, almost all songs that I wrote for those assignments. So, in a way, it's bad because I almost don't write anything anymore, other than like for these prompts that come on. And it's not like I'm writing all the time then either. I'm just, if something strikes my fancy, but like, yeah, I've kind of gotten out of the habit of just spontaneously writing something, quote unquote, I mean, they're all for myself at this point anyway, but.
Well, it's interesting because I've heard that said before. Like, one thought comes to mind, the late Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne. I've heard mm-hmm. him talk about that. And you guys have similar parallels. He used a lot of, humor in his writing, and sort of mine, the sort of the melodic thing too. But I'd heard him in an interview mention, that he preferred assignment writing because he, like you, had done work for films and so it was kind of interesting you said the same thing. It's sort of like, preferring that, having that assignment and then jumping off from there and putting yourself into it and your own, personality. So that seemed to work for him.
If you're writing, quote unquote, like just for yourself, just whatever you are spontaneously thinking of, I think that's more of a tendency to just write the same thing, you know.
That's true.
You know, obviously as you go through life, I mean, other things could, you know, well, more in your case, but like if you have a family and you're having kids, I mean, things are happening in your life that might make you write different songs. Not that you're going to write autobiographical songs. That's not necessarily.
It's definitely true. I mean, I could attest to that for sure. I mean, I think my third record, once I was married and had a kid, and certainly, you know, totally reflects that. You know, it's for sure. If you have, you know, if your different experiences are going to prompt things, but I think what you're saying in terms of the assignment stuff is cool. Is that it does give you a hard and sort of fast target. You know, whether
because I mean, like would I have ever written a song that mentioned Steve McQueen? You know, if I hadn't been, you know,
of course,
had a reason to. No, I created my own assignment initially because I said to the guy, "I'll write you a song."
Right, but still based on his.
But still, you know, I'm just trying to pitch it to him, but like it's still an assignment in a way, you know. I mean, and then this and Happiness similarly, you know, the film he wanted to call the film Happiness, so the character was Joy, so it was like at one point it was going to be called Joy and Happiness. But I mean, like, you know, it's, you know, and then when we're talking about other films, I mean, then American Splendor, I actually, my friend who had cast Todd's films, did she work? She definitely worked on Happiness. I'm not remembering if she worked on Welcome to the Dollhouse. My friend Ann Golder. Anyway, she called me in to actually audition to play the part of Harvey Picar in American Splendor.
Oh, really?
Now, what if it was because they were just calling everybody in and just trying to? I mean, I'm not an actor really, but I mean, I wouldn't do it if someone paid me, obviously.
Right.
But my point is, like, whether they were just calling in a lot of people to show that they were leaving no stone unturned, or what actually her thinking was. Anyway, I meet with the directors, and they were like, "What? Wait a minute, are you an actor or are you a songwriter or musician?" However they put it, because they knew I did songs.
So wait a minute, they wanted you to try out for the Paul Giamatti role.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I initially went in for, was the Paul Giamatti role.
That's crazy. I'm sorry, I interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, please do. No, so I you know, auditioned with a few scenes. You know, I had a few scenes of script and went in and read them with the director. And then they were, you know, it's like, well, I don't understand. Are you an actor? Well, I first of all, I said a few different things because I'm like, well, I'm like, whatever you got, you know. But also was the sound editor, as I said, so I'm like, really, whatever you got, you know.
Sure.
You got any of these jobs if you got. And then they were kind of joking that they want, like, I could write a song, but I didn't really get the sense that they really wanted a song. But I just said to myself, well, okay, I mean, I'll write you a song. So then I went home and just took various things that were said in the script, various concepts in the scripts, and made this song, sent it to them.
Again, going back to your college days of like, you know, summarizing things. It's really funny how that stuff helps you later in life, right? Right.
So then I went to another audition. Well, probably again, I think they called me and said, well, some bad news. You know, HBO decided that they need a bigger name, so we're going with Paul Giamatti. Like, first of all, I didn't think he was that big of a name, but he's certainly a bigger name than I was, or anything, whatever. And I said, you know, and I really, look, I never thought I was getting the part anyway, so you don't have to apologize. I mean, but then they were like, oh, could you come in? Called me again and read for these other smaller parts, of like 2 lines or whatever. Then after that, then they call me and say, okay, well, we feel like we can't cast you in these smaller parts because you're too much like Harvey. I didn't think I was too much like Paul Giamatti, but okay, fine, yeah, whatever. They wanted more contrast with these other smaller,
different characters
roles. But the good news is we decided to use your song, and we're writing it into the scene where he goes to see this play about himself, and it's going to be this big pivotal thing that is a transition from one part of his life to another. Oh, okay, great. I mean, well, okay, you'll be in the scene, you'll perform it.
That was fantastic.
The only bad thing is
you're
you'll
in
have
the
to
movie
pay,
anyway.
you have to pay your own way to Cleveland.
Cleveland.
Okay, whatever. So it's basically like that
Still
used
a great
up all the money
opportunity.
that I was making. But yeah, no, I mean, who wouldn't accept it? I mean,
So you end up in the film anyway. You're not the Paul Giamatti character, but you're in the film and you're singing your song that they're using.
right,
It's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
The only bad thing was that they only had me do basically the chorus over and over again. I wish I'd gotten to do like a verse at least or something.
It plays good in the film. It definitely plays.
Oh yeah,
great,
yeah. No, but I guess look, it is what it is.
as they say.
But the good thing about that was that I went to the I don't know what it was. It was a cast and crew screening. It was some kind of premiere. It couldn't have been just cast and crew because Paul Giamatti he's in the cast. So, but I mean, Harvey Picar was there.
Oh wow, cool.
It was a whole event where they had down by the Chelsea Piers all the food that like Harvey Picar like hot dogs, jelly beans. I don't even remember.
All the
donuts.
stuff that he likes. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it was a big party. And I get there and I'm like, oh man, how come you're not on the album? People were asking me. I'm like, I didn't even know there was an album. And what
classic,
album,
classic showbiz
album. Which I hadn't mentioned, but I did have two of my songs from the Tao of Steve were actually on the soundtrack album. But anyway, which it didn't sell any copies, so whatever. But
man, it's the craziness of the business.
If the main songs on the soundtrack album were by me, then it's not going to sell too many. But, I mean, there were some other songs, but they weren't like unique to that movie. They had the Lemonheads and some other things. But anyway, for this thing, people at the American Splendor party, they're saying like, well, how come you're not in the album?
You're like, I don't know.
Like, oh, well, and I see they were giving away the album. And I'm like, and then people were, well, these are just songs that Harvey liked.
I see.
Not that he put together the album, but that's the way they're like, well, these are the songs, because he was a jazz critic. And these are things that, are
that he felt
whatever.
Representative of, what he was into.
I mean, look, I don't even remember if that's true. Like, were the Pretenders not on there? There were other rock songs in the movie. Not that my songs are rock songs, but I mean, just like there were other songs, and I don't remember if they were in the movie, on the soundtrack album or not. But regardless, then I was talking to this guy who was putting together the DVD, and he was looking for extras, and he was like, oh, there's a whole song. There's really, there's more than this just in the movie. I'm like, yeah,
that's a whole song.
Oh well,
man.
we could use that. And then so they took my song, used it as an extra. They had no video of it, so they just used a still picture of from the movie of like a record player.
Of a record player. That's great.
But I got $5,000 for that,
man.
Which is more than I got for the movie, and I'm sure it would have been more than I would have gotten from the album too.
Probably so. So it worked out on the DVD side.
Yes.
Yeah, never discount those DVD extras. So we're talking about film, but I just wanted to switch gears a little bit from the musical side of film to sort of touch a little bit on your parallel career as a film sound editor. Now, you'd mentioned that before. Now, you've in that role, you've sort of worked on also some pretty amazing Academy Award-winning films like Chicago and Ron Howard's A Beautiful Mind. Can you tell us a little bit about your film sound editing work and what it's like to sort of contribute to films of that caliber? Yeah,
well, when I got out of film school and I wanted to get into editing, aside from writing, I was into editing.
Mm-hmm.
So the first job I got was just some super low budget thing. I don't even remember what it was. I mean, of course, it's decades ago.
No, when you say editing, you mean film editing, picture and sound.
Yeah, I mean the picture side of it. So the first job I had was like an assistant. I got into assistant. It was like such a low budget thing. I think I was making $250 a week or nothing. And initially, first I was just making my car fare, but then somebody left and I replaced it. Then I met someone, and it's crazy because I had someone I had met at a party, and is still my friend, although I don't really see him much anymore. But I met somebody at a party, and he eventually got me work as an assistant editor on these Orville Redenbacher commercials.
Cool.
In the late '80s,
right? Sure.
And then
I remember him.
it was at Maisels Films. They're renowned. They were renowned documentarians.
Sure.
But then they started making these, cinema verite commercials. People would hire them to bring their, experience with these documentaries.
It's like the Maisel brothers, right? Is that their...
Right, yeah. Albert and David. One guy, did the camera and the other did the sound. That would be their whole crew, when they were doing their cinema verite stuff. When I worked there, David, I think, was not alive. Albert was. He lived in the Dakota. Once went to a Christmas party at his apartment.
That's cool.
But because I worked there on different things, like freelance. I even worked on the 25th anniversary Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition documentary.
Oh boy!
And met Cheryl Teagues, Elle Macpherson.
Wow.
So this was still in a picture assistant work. And I was, just having randomly met somebody at a party and all that, and
kept
in touch with them for a few years. And then from working with an editor that I met at Maisels, on the Orville Redenbacher commercial, she went on to, Pam Wise was her name. She went on to edit this documentary about Carnegie Hall, and working on that, I met this sound editor named Sandy Rackow, and he was going on to work on this Chevy Chase film, Funny Farm.
Okay.
And he got me on there, which in retrospect was amazing because I had no experience at that and didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't even know that I didn't know what I was doing, Like, I didn't know that I didn't know, so I wasn't even lying. I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Right, you had no idea what you didn't know.
Yeah, right. So, and then from that, it kind of, a couple of years later, after that, I did some video editing for this children's show called Eureka's Castle on Nickelodeon. Did these short, 1 minute video shorts, which was a lot of fun.
So you had your hand in the video side of editing as well.
But then I got into another sound. Yeah, in the beginning I was more in wanting to do picture, but I got into another job with the same sound editor from Funny Farm. He was supervising this film called Quick Change, which has kind of become like a cult thing.
Was that Bill Murray or something? Oh no,
Bill Murray. He's in it and he co-directed it.
Right, that was cool. I remember that film. Was he a clown or he
didn't do well at the time? But I mean, it's
was he dressed as like a clown or something in that?
Yeah, he robs a bank dressed as a clown, and then nobody knows what he looked like.
Right. I remember.
I don't even remember. Does he walk out looking like everyone else? They leave maybe dressed as a hostage.
I just remember that the film was good, and that it was like you said. It was like there were a lot of memorable, funny, like Bill Murray lines in it, and it wasn't like the kind of thing that it really didn't. It wasn't a huge hit. Yeah, I remember that.
Right. No,
but
definitely
it was a cool film.
not. But people quote it now and they love it. It's funny because at the time, and Bill Murray was around all the time because he was the co-director. And in fact, I would jokingly tell people that he was my brother. That's how I got the job. He changed his name from Bill Mirsky when he became famous. And then one time he came into the editing. I'm wagging his finger Bill Mirsky.
That's funny.
So somebody told him about that, but
I remember there was a line. Didn't he say he was like something? Welcome clowns. Well, I don't know. there was a bunch of really memorable lines.
in the opening sequence, he's walking past a porno theater or show world or something, and the guy is going lady, whatever, naked ladies or whatever, and then he walks by and he goes, "Clowns welcome, clowns welcome," something like that.
It stuck in my head. Yeah,
along something along those lines.
Yeah, along those lines. Yeah, that's what it was.
The barker,
right? The barker for the theater, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah.
But after that, then I kind of stayed in sound because it's just there were just more jobs in sound editing. So I worked
gigs
on Bonfire, The Vanities, and eventually I hooked up with this one supervising sound editor. I mean, I worked with a variety of people, but this one supervising sound editor, Maurice Schell, and I worked with him for about 10 years as his right-hand man. So, and then we worked on bunch of De Palma films, a bunch of David Mamet directed films, and but I did work with another crew that did the Ron Howard movies too, and that supervisor's name is Chick Ciccolini. So I worked with a few different groups of people.
That's amazing, man. It's just like an amazing sort of. You've kind of had two really interesting, careers. Both sides. In terms of really three, if you think about it. I mean, you put out a lot of records on your own as an artist. You've done a lot of work for film in terms of writing songs, as we were talking about, and then the whole sound editing thing, within these films and Academy Award winning stuff. I mean, and working with all these great people, it's really pretty cool, that you've kind of had these, and interesting too that you've had these three parallel paths,
Yeah, and the weird thing is that for the most part, I didn't get songs in the movies because I was working in movies. They really had nothing to do with it. I mean, I did get one time music editor that I knew got a song that was a pre-existing song and put it in the background of this Robert Altman film called The Company. But other than that, there really wasn't much occasion where the fact that I was in film helped me at all. It was just and in fact,
a nice.
I now work at HBO, and that had nothing even to do with me being in American Splendor, which was before I worked at HBO. So yeah, it's just crazy, man. It's funny how life works. The more artists I talk to, it's musicians, comedians, whatever, actor, you find that it's these weird sort of little things that happen in life, that put them in a certain place at the right time, and and then one thing leads to another. It seems to be a recurring theme. I guess it's sort of a recurring theme in showbiz, to be like if I hadn't if I hadn't gone to school with Todd Solondz, wouldn't have, it's probably unlikely that I would have ever done anything for film. And then not only that, like that, having had the song in his film, then, motivated me to do more music at the time. I had done one album, but I might have just gone like, well, I made an album, that's all. I mean, I'm not selling it to anybody anyway. No one is buying, other than like a few people that I know. So, whether I would have done anything more with that at the time, I mean,
It all feeds off of each other in a weird way.
Right, because then I got things into more movies, and then that made me record even more music, and it just,
It's amazing. Excellent.
And as far as the, sound editing career, I'm saying, and my whole career, if I hadn't gone to a party and met a guy, I would never even have gotten a job, probably. Who knows?
Yeah, it's good. Go to those parties, man. You never know. Right. So hey, man, I wanted to thank you so much for doing this. I know it's taking time out of your day to do it, and it's really excellent to sort of hear. Your career path. It's pretty unique and interesting, like I said, with the sort of parallel things going, again, all sort of feeding off each other. But, it was really cool to hear your story and how we go and how you went about things. Now, before we wrap things up, I know you're going to do a song for us from home. I wanted to ask you, like, what's the name of the tune you're going to do? And you maybe want to, tell us a little something about the song?
Sure. I'm going to do the song "The Weed in Your Garden."
Okay.
And it's not an illicit kind of weed. I don't want to get in.
Right. We want to get that
the wrong idea here.
Right.
But and it's off my album "The Year of the Mouse."
Okay. Cool.
And it's kind of it fits into our whole discussion about like songs that are both comical in a way and serious at the same time.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, hey, man, thanks again. So let's do it. Here's Eytan Mirsky with "The Weed in Your Garden" on Queen's Creative.
You never planted the seed, but one day I just started to grow. Hiding my roots in between all the flowers where no one would know. Soon I was everywhere you didn't want me to be. I am the weed in your garden of love, you can't kill me. You gave the the flowers, the love and attention that you had to give. But you made it clear from the start that you don't even want me to live. I've got a beauty inside that I want you to see. I am the weed in your garden of love. You can't kill me. You can't kill me, no matter how you try. No poisons can drive me away. You can get on your knees and uproot me, but I'll grow back the very next day. Soon when the weather gets cold and your delicate flowers are gone, I'll still be here in the garden with you, and that's where I belong. Someday I'll reach for the sun and grow tall as a tree. I am the weed in your garden of love. You can't kill me. I am the weed in your garden of love. You can't kill me. You can't kill me.
Huge thanks to Eytan for visiting Queens Creative and sharing his interesting story. To learn more about Eytan and his work, search the interwebs for EYTAN MIRSKY. Well, that's it for this episode of QC. As I always say, I don't know about you kids, but I had a lot of fun today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your pods, and please visit Queens Public Television on the web at qptv.org. QPTV can also be found on Facebook at facebook.com/Queens Public Television, and on Twitter and Instagram, we're at QPTV. Queens Creative was produced, recorded, and mixed by yours truly, with assistance from audio engineer Lee Bacino. Thanks for listening. I'm Mark Bacino. Till next time, stay safe out there, folks.